She doesn't yell. She drains you quietly. Not with fists, with questions that sound like care and rules that sound like love. Most men never notice the shift until they're living in a house where every word feels like a test. You wake up apologizing for things you didn't do. You explain yourself in your own home. You watch her face for permission to exist. And the worst part? Everyone thinks she's perfect. But you see the look, the sigh, the silence that makes your chest tight. You're not imagining it. You're experiencing something psychologists have mapped for decades. Covert narcissism wrapped in the language of partnership. Today, we're breaking down the 5 traits every narcissistic wife hides behind charm, until it's too late. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. Understanding these 5 traits isn't about hate. It's about clarity, so you can finally tell love from manipulation. Because real love doesn't make you smaller. It doesn't require constant proof. And it definitely doesn't punish you for being human. What you're about to hear might feel uncomfortable. That discomfort? That's recognition knocking. If you value truth over comfortable lies, hit that like and hype buttons immediately. Subscribe to this channel and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. I want to know where my strongest, most aware men are tuning in tonight. Trait 1. She needs to be the hero. Even in your pain. Here's the first sign most men miss completely. She comforts you, but only so she can own the story later. You lose your job, and she's right there with tea and tissues. You open up about your father, and she listens with perfect empathy. You think you've found safety. You haven't. You've found an audience scout. Because 3 weeks later, at dinner with friends, she retells your breakdown. But now, she's the star. She describes how broken you were, how she held you together, how lost you'd be without her guidance. The psychology here is surgical. She doesn't help you heal. She collects your wounds like trophies. Every vulnerable moment you share becomes material for her performance of selflessness. And here's the trap. You can't call it out without sounding ungrateful. She did comfort you, after all. She was there. But real support doesn't need an audience. Real empathy doesn't keep receipts. She does both. Watch what happens after you share something painful. Does it stay between you? Or does it become her favorite anecdote about her own strength? Does she ask how you're doing a week later? Or does she remind you how she saved you? True partners hold space. Narcissistic ones collect evidence of your weakness to reinforce their superiority. And the cruelest part, she makes you feel like you owe her for being human, for needing someone, for trusting her with truth. Every tear you cry becomes a debt in her ledger. Every moment of pain becomes her credibility. She doesn't love you through your struggle. She loves what your struggle does for her image. You start censoring yourself, holding back, pretending you're fine even when you're not, because vulnerability has become too expensive. And slowly, you become isolated in your own relationship, unable to share, unable to be real, unable to be anything except strong enough to not need her, which, of course, she'll also punish you for. She needs you broken enough to save, but never healed enough to leave. That's the balance she maintains. You exist in permanent need of her heroism, and every time you reach out, every time you trust her with your pain, you're feeding the narrative she'll use to prove she's irreplaceable. But the next trait is worse. It's the one that makes you doubt your own memory. Pay attention now, because what comes next is the psychological mechanism that breaks men slowly, quietly, and so completely they don't even notice it happening. Trait 2. She rewrites reality. In real time, this one breaks men slowly. She changes the past while you're still standing in it. You had a conversation on Tuesday. By Friday, it never happened. You made plans she agreed to. Now you're the crazy one for assuming. You remember her words exactly, but she remembers them differently. And her version always makes you the villain. Psychologists call this gaslighting. But that term doesn't capture the daily erosion. It's not one big lie. It's 1,000 small rewrites that make you question whether you can trust your own brain. You say something hurt you. She says you're too sensitive. You bring up a promise. She says you misunderstood. You recall her exact tone. She says you're imagining things. And the most poisonous part? She does it with absolute conviction. No hesitation. No doubt. She rewrites history with the confidence of someone who believes their own edits. You start keeping notes, saving messages, recording dates, because you need proof that you're not losing your mind. And that's exactly when you've lost. Because healthy love doesn't require evidence logs. It doesn't make you feel insane for having a memory. Here's what this does to you over time. You stop trusting your perceptions. You second-guess every reaction. You apologize for feeling things. You become a stranger to your own experience. She controls the narrative, which means she controls reality itself. And once she owns the past, she owns you. You can't argue with someone who edits truth in real time. You can't win against someone who never admits to anything. The argument isn't about facts anymore. It's about who gets to decide what's real. And in her world, only her version counts. You find yourself saying things like, "I could have sworn," and "maybe I'm wrong," even when you know you're not. You start every difficult conversation already doubting yourself, already preparing to be corrected, already apologizing for bringing it up. And she watches this happen. She sees you shrink. And she never once questions her own certainty. Because to her, the truth isn't what happened. The truth is whatever keeps her blameless. You become smaller every time she rewrites something, more uncertain, more willing to accept her version just to end the confusion. And eventually, you forget there was ever a version of you that trusted his own mind. You stop bringing things up. Stop asking questions. Stop expecting her to remember anything that doesn't serve her. And that silence? That's exactly what she was aiming for. A man who no longer challenges her version of events. A man who has learned that his memory, his experience, his reality, none of it matters as much as hers. Once she controls the narrative, she controls your mind. But wait until you see how she controls your guilt. Trait 3. She uses guilt as her favorite currency. This is where she stops asking and starts collecting. Guilt isn't an emotion in her hands. It's a tool, a currency, a weapon she deploys with surgical timing. You worked late on a project. She goes silent for 3 days. Not angry, just cold. You forgot to pick up milk. She mentions every single thing she does for this household. You chose your friend's birthday over her cousin's baby shower. She reminds you of this for 6 months. And here's what makes it so effective. She never says she's upset. She just withdraws. The warmth disappears. The softness vanishes. You're left guessing what you did wrong, which means you're already apologizing before she even names the crime. This is emotional economics. She keeps a running tab of every minor failure, every small disappointment, every moment you prioritized yourself. And the price? Your peace, your confidence, your ability to make decisions without fear. Watch what happens when you do something for yourself. Go to the gym. See a friend. Take an hour alone. She doesn't forbid it. She just makes you pay for it later. the silent treatment, the martyred sighs, the barely there answers, and suddenly you're negotiating for space in your own life. You're explaining why you need things that don't include her. You're justifying normal human boundaries like they're betrayals. Real partners don't collect debts from your existence. They don't punish you for being separate. But she does. And the guilt she creates isn't based on real harm. It's based on the crime of not centering her in every single moment. You start making decisions based on avoiding her coldness instead of based on what you actually want. You become small, careful, constantly calculating what will cost you the least. And she never has to say a word. The guilt does all her work. It keeps you in line. It keeps you performing. It keeps you trying to earn back warmth that should never have been conditional in the first place. You stop doing things you enjoy because the guilt afterward isn't worth it. You cancel plans. You skip workouts. You decline invitations. Not because she told you to, because you're managing her emotions for her. And that's exactly where she wants you. Responsible for her happiness. Guilty for your own. Trapped in an invisible prison where every choice is measured by whether it will displease her. You start asking permission without realizing it, checking in before making simple choices, seeking approval for things that should require none. And she never has to demand this control. You hand it to her willingly, piece by piece, just to avoid the coldness that comes when you forget she's the center of everything. Guilt keeps you staying, but the next trait keeps you performing. And this is where it gets really dark, because what she does next turns your entire understanding of love into a transaction. Trait 4. She turns love into performance. Love with her isn't a state, it's a show. And you're always auditioning. She's affectionate when you please her, cold when you don't. She laughs at your jokes when you've been good, rolls her eyes when you've disappointed her. She touches you after you've proven your worth, pulls away when you've failed her invisible tests. This is intermittent reinforcement, the same psychological mechanism that makes gambling addictive. You never know when you'll get the reward, so you keep trying, keep performing, keep chasing the version of her that felt like love, because she was loving once. In the beginning, she was everything, attentive, warm, present. You felt seen, chosen, valued. And that's the version you're trying to get back. But here's the truth. That version was the audition. This is the show. Now you're working for scraps of what used to be freely given. You bring her flowers. Sometimes she's delighted. Sometimes she barely looks. You plan a date. Sometimes she's grateful. Sometimes she's annoyed you didn't ask what she wanted. You initiate closeness. Sometimes she responds. Sometimes she makes you feel pathetic for trying. There's no pattern, no logic, just the constant uncertainty that keeps you guessing. And that's the point. Because if you knew the rules, you could master them. If you knew what pleased her, you could relax. But you can't. Because the rules change based on her mood, her needs, her secret scoreboard that you're not allowed to see. Real love is steady. It doesn't make you perform for basic affection. It doesn't withdraw warmth as punishment. It doesn't turn intimacy into a reward system. But hers does. And the cruelest part? You start believing you're the problem. That if you were better, more attentive, more perfect, she'd be consistent. You blame yourself for her coldness. You work harder for her approval. You sacrifice more of yourself trying to unlock the love you think you're failing to earn. You don't realize the game is rigged, that no amount of performing will ever be enough, because she doesn't want a partner. She wants an audience that never stops trying to impress her. You become exhausted, trying to decode her moods, trying to anticipate her needs, trying to earn what should simply exist. And the version of you that used to laugh freely, that used to relax, that used to feel confident in being wanted, that version disappears, replaced by someone always on alert, always performing, always one step away from her disapproval. You measure every word before you speak. You rehearse conversations in your head. You study her face for signs of which version of her you're getting today. This isn't love. This is survival. And somewhere deep down, you know it. But admitting that means admitting you've been performing for someone who was never going to give you what you needed. And that truth is too painful to face. So you keep performing, keep hoping, keep believing that one day, if you just get it right, she'll love you the way she did in the beginning. But the final trait is the reason you can't leave, even when you finally see her clearly. Because everything I've described so far, that keeps you confused, keeps you guilty, keeps you trying. But this final trait? This destroys who you are. Trait 5. She mirrors your soul, then steals it. This one is the most dangerous because it feels like destiny at first. She loves your music, your books, your way of seeing the world. She asks about your childhood dreams, your strange thoughts at 3 a.m., your fears you've never told anyone. And she doesn't just listen. She adopts them. Suddenly, she's into jazz because you are. She's reading philosophy because you do. She's using your phrases, your humor, your perspectives. It feels like you've found your mirror, your twin flame, the one person who finally gets it. You haven't. You've found a psychological chameleon. This is the idealization phase. She studies you like an exam, absorbs your identity, becomes the perfect reflection of everything you value. And it works. You fall completely. You trust completely. You open completely. Because finally, someone speaks your language. Then comes the shift. Slowly, she starts criticizing the very things she once mirrored. Your music taste becomes immature. Your books become pretentious. Your dreams become unrealistic. The thoughts you shared? Now they're proof you're lost. She doesn't just stop reflecting you. She turns your own identity into evidence against you. And here's the devastation. She knows exactly where to strike. Because you gave her the map. You showed her every vulnerable place, every dream, every fear, every piece of yourself you thought was safe with her. She weaponizes your own soul against you. Watch what she kept after studying you. She still uses your phrases, but now with a different tone. She still references your beliefs, but as jokes. She absorbed your identity, then repackaged it as hers while making yours seem lesser. This is identity theft at the psychological level. She didn't just learn about you. She consumed you, copied you, then discarded the original while keeping the parts she liked. And by the time she's done, you don't even remember who you were before her. You've lost your hobbies because she made them feel silly. Your friends because she made them feel insufficient. Your confidence because she made your authentic self feel wrong. You became what she needed you to be. And when you stopped serving that function, she kept the best parts of you and made you feel ashamed of the rest. You're not yourself anymore. You're an edited version, a performance, a shadow of whoever you were before she decided you were raw material for her collection. You look in the mirror and don't recognize the man staring back. You sound different, move differently, think differently. Not because you grew, because you were erased. She took your identity and wore it better than you did. And now you're left wondering who you even are without her definitions. This is the final trap. She doesn't just control your present. She rewrites your past and steals your future. Because without a clear sense of self, where would you even go? Who would you even be? She made sure the answer to that question disappeared the moment you trusted her with it. You can't leave because you don't know who you'd be without her. You can't stay because you're disappearing. And that's the most effective prison ever designed. Not walls, not chains, just the slow erasure of everything that made you recognizable to yourself, until you're a ghost in your own life. Present, but not living. Speaking, but not saying anything real. Existing in a performance of a person who once knew who he was. Every narcissist counts on one thing: your silence. The part of you that thinks maybe you're overreacting. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe if you just try harder, communicate better, love deeper, things will shift. They won't. Because the problem was never your effort. It was never your communication. It was never your love. The problem is that she built a relationship on a foundation of control. And control doesn't become partnership just because you finally see it clearly. So ask yourself this: when did you stop talking and start apologizing for existing? When did you become a stranger in your own life? And how long are you willing to stay disappeared? Because she's not counting the days. She's counting on your silence to last forever.